Would you rather have a cost per deal that's 1,500, but you made 20,000 this month, or a cost per deal that's 5,000, but you made 100 grand?
What is going on, guys? Welcome to today's episode of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast. This is Wednesday. This is our off-market operator show. And on these Wednesday shows, we dive into real estate investing, business, and whatever else we feel like. If this is your first time here, my name is Mike DeHaan, here with my co-hosts Dan Austin and Dylan Cook. And our goal with this show is to help as many of you as possible build seven-figure real estate investing businesses. And so if you are like kind of trying to figure out real estate or trying to scale something massive, then this is the show for you. Guys, happy Wednesday. How are you guys all doing this fine day? Anything exciting in your world? Dylan over there in Cincinnati slinging some deals?
Yeah, well, we're supposed to have one closed tomorrow, and I just got the seller actually about an hour ago called me and said that they weren't going to show up to closing, so I still got to fight through that one.
So the seller's not showing up to closing, and this is actually a great discussion because a great thing to bring up, because I feel like this has been happening more and more like recently, like in the scale community. We've had similar situations like this sort of resurging.
It used to just be relegated to Mike and me. I feel like we're the only ones that it ever happened to, and it happened to us all the time.
To sellers not showing up, dude. I can only think of one.
Crazy sellers being crazy.
Crazy sellers being crazy, but dude, I mean, besides that one dude that like bounced off to Austin that we knew was a freaking sleazebag.
Yeah, like straight up just not showing, like ghosting. We definitely had a bunch of sellers over the years say like, "Oh, I'm not going to do this" or whatever. They want to change their mind. It would get weird,
but usually not like on closing day.
No.
Yeah. But it may
literally, I reached out to her because I was like, "Hey, I'm about to wire the funds. Like, going to make sure you're going to be there."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Nope, not showing up. I have a better offer." And I'm like, and then she hung up on me. So then I had to go to this podcast. Nice. So she will be getting a call afterwards. But like, we already have the contract recorded at the county too. So like, she can't sell it out from underneath us.
Interesting.
But at the same time, there's a way to make this work amicably for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, it always brings up a great, I would say, ethical dilemma with this business, right? And because obviously you've already committed to doing the deal. You have money in. Is this going to be a wholesaler or like something you were buying?
No, it was going to be a flip. We were going to buy it. And then we were going to give her 3 months to find closing afterwards because she's an older lady.
Yeah.
And so her income is Social Security, excuse me. And so she doesn't qualify for the 2.5, 3 times the rent anywhere else.
Yeah.
So I put in our contract, worst case scenario, like we have a rental for you if needed.
Interesting.
Oh. So I'm trying to be as accommodating as I can.
Yeah. Nice. So that gives you even more grounds though to pursue something because you're closing on it. Where it really gets weird is when you're trying to wholesale.
Totally.
When this happens. And it always comes down to like what are the legal things you can pursue as well as like the ethical things. What should you pursue? And legally, obviously, you can cloud title. You can take out a scale lawsuit against the seller. You can do all sorts of different things, but in the couple situations that Dan and I have had, and there was one in particular where he didn't necessarily not show up to closing, but he closed with somebody else 2 days before we were supposed to close.
Yeah.
And we missed out. Yeah. We missed out on like a $20,000 fee. And this was early on. So we were pissed and we were like, we're going to sue this guy about calling lawyers and shit. And the lawyers were basically like, so you two like rich white dudes who are going to make $20,000 on this deal that were knowingly buying it for less than it was worth are going to sue this guy that fundamentally has nothing. They were like, how do you think that's going to sit with like a judge?
And Mike said, I don't care. I want my money.
No,
so
but it's a valid point, right?
Dylan, you said that you can that you recorded the purchase and sale though? Like, what does that mean? Is that an Ohio thing?
Basically, it's like the version of clouding title.
Oh,
like we have a notice of interest, but they literally have like Exhibit B, and Exhibit B is our contract. That's
okay.
Yeah.
And so you do you generally do that beforehand, or did that happen because you thought she was a flight risk?
The second part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like Mike, it's a good point. Like because on the outside surface, this could be painted in such a bad picture because she's an older woman on Social Security. She has a foreclosure filed against her. And, we're buying it at a great price. Our projected profit's going to be like $50K after a rehab. But that's literally like going to be an almost 9-month hold probably because it's a huge flip. And we're giving her 3 months from the start, right? Yep. So there's market risk. And no one else, she's probably not telling anybody else the intangibles of, we will literally give you a place to live for free during this transition, right? And so it's like the counterbalance, like do you justify the means to an end.
Yeah.
For the profits.
Yeah.
And I think we're actually being reasonable.
Yeah. Well, I think the challenge is, you know, how is that going to sit if you do decide to pursue legal action? And what we always think about is if the situation that you're going through, if that was to end up on the front page of the newspaper, how bad do you look? Right? Like if there are 100 different ways that you are the bad guy, it's probably kind of tricky, right? You know, obviously media can skew things, but like if you look fundamentally at it, if like a third party was looking from the outside in, if you would look even slightly like a dirtbag, you really got to tread with caution.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. But like, what if I just say, okay, I threw my hands, you know, we're out of the deal. What if the bank takes it?
Yeah, but the bank everyone already thinks the bank's an asshole, so that's fine.
Yeah, do you want to be the
Yeah,
asshole?
the bank's not going to give her 3 months to go for free.
Of course not. But that's the rational argument. That's not how people work. It's an emotional thing is what tends to drive a lot of people's decisions with stuff like that.
And I think that I guess the root of this is, Dylan, you did exactly what Mike and I would do regardless of the situation.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like here's one thing is like we've never been people that will like force you to sell your house. If you're going and you're saying I've got a better offer and we've already committed and you're in the boat that you're in, what you're going to go to closing, yeah, you cloud title, because that's just them breaking like the written and unwritten rules of having a contract with a human being, which is I said I will do this, I will perform, and you have money set aside essentially for this transaction. Maybe you already had a loan, and now if you have to drop it, maybe you don't have to lose money on it. Maybe you do. Maybe you had to pay for an appraisal. But your like brand gets dinged with that private lender or that hard money lender. It's like, dude, we had money ready for you, and now you're just going to back out. Like next time, we're probably not going to fund it if it's between you and somebody else. So there's like, you know, layers of damage here for you. So it's like, yes, you're going to do what the right thing to do is for you. Now, if it comes to like you trying to sue them over that, that's where it's usually not worth it.
Totally. And like, you know, the attorney fees would add up anyway. And honestly, my plan now is he doesn't show up is I'm just going to basically let it sit for like 2 weeks. And I don't know how it is in your guys, but in the state of Ohio, you can actually do, there's a 30-day redemption period post a sheriff's sale. So even if it goes to a sheriff's sale and she gets foreclosed on, I'd be like, this is our chance. Like we have 30 days to figure this out.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Right. And so it's just going to have to be a weighted
And the
out
thing with clouding
kind of
title
thing.
too, I guess to provide some explanation for those that aren't familiar with that process is what I would tend to favor is you cloud title, and essentially they can't really sell that property because you now have an interest. When we say cloud, like, and Dylan, you said earlier, it's like you have a recorded interest in the property, so they can't go anywhere. Like they can't move it. So however long that recorded interest sits there is, if they go to sell it in that time frame, they have to call you. So they're kind of in that situation.
So if Mike and Dan would have done that originally, they could have saved their $20,000 maybe.
Totally.
But honestly, totally. Yeah. But we didn't even know that at the time.
Yeah, we didn't have a good little mentorship community to like had been dealing with shit like this yet.
We were finding it on our own. That's why we decided to start the scale community.
Yeah, honestly, because like back when we were super involved in CCF, I learned that not everyone deals with dipshits all the time. Like we were like very unique in that way. I remember going to our first meetup and I'd be like, wait, so you don't have like crackheads that do like insane stuff? You've never been in a house where a landlord and tenant have gotten into a fist fight? Like, what are your sellers like? Like, oh, you should just like nice older people. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I'm moving to Nashville. This is horseshit. I'm sorry you're dealing with that, but it sounds like it, you know, it's par for the course, and you have taken the appropriate stuff forward. Yeah, I don't know. So, I think a good lesson from this though is not only around being able to weigh the seller and if there are risks and taking the appropriate action early, right? And not doing it as a retaliatory measure.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing too, is if you had gone through, you know, for example, in Dan and I situation, if it had been earlier, it wouldn't have been as dicey, right? If we did need to pursue a lawsuit, because we did it on day one. Like we were not doing anything weird versus like he decided to go back on us and now we're trying to file it. That's a problem.
Totally.
But also too, it's a great lesson in why you should be over communicative with sellers when you're going through a transaction. You should also be moving to close transactions quickly, because as you get through, especially if there's any sort of personal security around the seller, like where they're going to be moving to, their next living situation, all that sort of stuff, they're going to get seller's remorse as they get closer and closer to that. And they realize that they aren't going to be able to be living the same lifestyle that they were, not paying their bills. They're actually going to have to go and pay bills now somewhere else to be able to live.
And don't rely, unless you have a great relationship with your title company, don't rely on them to be the communication pieces, even though they should be.
Yeah.
Because they will drop the ball
100%.
and then you look like crap because someone else wasn't communicating properly.
Even though they should be in every sense. Literally, right before we got on this recording, I got an email to like our admin TC email, and I looked at it and it just said, "We're closing tomorrow. Will the seller be attending closing in person?" Like, why the fuck are you asking me that? Ask the seller.
Yeah, that's like 80% of all the deals we get there. Can you schedule the seller? You're like, no. Like, what?
No, you have their number.
So many
just call them. Dude, it's terrible. But other than that, closing a wholesale tomorrow. I have a wholesale next week, and we'll probably be listing. Have one active listing, and then 2 more listings. Hopefully, either the next 10 or 14 days.
Sweet.
But I wanted that kind of segues into a nice little. We've been flipping a little bit more, and I've had some problems with appraisals lately. On our own stuff, where they've come down. $10,000, $12,000 below our sale price. Right. So then you have to go back to the seller and be like, hey, you have to come out of this out of pocket, or sorry, the buyer would have to come out of pocket, or we have to reduce our price pretty much to cover that gap. Right. And in our situation, you just kind of look at what's your net and you just kind of make that decision if it's worth it or not, because you're likely to have that problem again if it just goes back to market.
Yep.
So we've just taken the loss, even though I could probably justify some of the reasons why they shouldn't. And we tried to argue for some, but I'm literally like 0 for 6 in battling appraisals. But it made me do some research, right? And there's this one article that's like the untold truth of home appraisals. And I just want to read these 2 stats. And I think this is like the most ironic part. When the appraiser didn't know the contract price, only 45% of appraisals came in at or above the contract price. Okay. So they didn't know 45%. When the appraiser knew the contract price, 93% of appraisals came in at or above the contract price. So you're literally talking a 40% difference just because they had some information ahead of time.
The appraisal process honestly is like the worst part of real estate. Honestly, it's like they're like the referees of real estate, honestly, because they come in and ultimately, despite everyone agreeing on the rules and the outcome, they can come in and completely screw it up.
They're the curmudgeons of real estate.
Totally.
Right.
Exactly.
They're the
curmudgeons.
They're going to wreck your deal.
Exactly. And regardless of which way they go, one side is probably going to be upset with them.
So let me,
unless they're like right on the money, which, as we've said, unless they know the outcome already, what it's supposed to be, they're apparently.
Do they not know the contract price of the deals that you have that are getting underappraised, Dylan?
Well, everyone that I have has had, but this did a study and basically blind did I think what they did was they gave appraisals appraisers. Right. Here, this property, and then do your appraisal on it, and then they actually compare that to.
They should give them wrong values too. Hey, the contract price was 10% above what it really is. You know what I mean? They should do that. I would be curious what that study would be too. I think appraisers, they're just like anything else. They're open to just having really shitty people. And so generally speaking, if you know the contract price and it's 300,000, you're going to go there and you're going to find things that justify that.
Yeah. Well, also too, when it comes to real estate in general, value is very subjective. You're going to look at different comps. You're going to have a different analysis of the neighborhood.
They will like to tell you that it's not subjective though. Like an appraiser's this is data driven. It's like, okay, so then why did you pick a comp that was a mile away when there's one that was 2 blocks away?
Well, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, yeah.
That's my
and
biggest
that's usually when whenever you get a low appraiser, mostly because you never check when you get the appraisal to be on. But whenever you get a low appraiser, you look at it and you're like, why? Logically, why did you do that comp? That's a totally different neighborhood. Just because it had the exact same shingles on the side of the house. I don't know. They pick their reasoning for picking the houses. Or they're like, well, that's not a like for like one, or that one had a fireplace and this one didn't, so I chose it. That is the least determining factor when it comes to the price of it. It's location for a reason.
Well, the problem is they look at the hard features of the house more so than
it's a checkbox for them, right?
Right, it is a checkbox. Well, that's the thing is a lot of them use these softwares now that just spits out the number, and it doesn't take into account the fact that you can literally go across the street, especially in places like Spokane. I don't know how Cincinnati is. We have areas here where there are houses that are $1.5 million that are literally a street away from meth houses. Right. And so, and technically, if you're selling one of those $1 million houses, those meth houses are going to be comps, but their values are going to be completely different.
Totally.
You know,
Totally.
and
Yeah.
but like if they were the same sort of fundamental house, they were similar age or similar square footage, they would be used as comps. That doesn't make any sense.
Totally. There's a zip code. If anyone's from Cincinnati listening, it's 45215, and it's literally like 4 or 5 different like small like townships, I guess. And one of them is very affluent. It's Wyoming, but then around it, like you said, it's like rough neighborhoods, right? So, but the school systems are different, the taxes are different, and one's gonna be 50,000, one's gonna be 500.
Wow. Yeah.
Like it's literally like that big of a difference across like a railroad tracks.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
And I don't know, like the whole thing was with the appraisals, like you said, value is subjective. And I know my biggest gripe, I think, is who the appraisers work for. They work for the lender, right? So the lenders are like trying to make sure that their bottom line is covered. But at the same time, if you're buying a residential place, they're underwriting you as a person. Like you are personally guaranteeing that loan anyway. So your job and income should be the one that's be able to pay that, not necessarily, you know, the value of the house. It's like, what is that payment?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. I mean, that is what should matter, but I don't know. Anyway, but do they technically work for the lender though? They're supposed to like be a third party.
I mean, yes, but they're like on behalf of like the lender doesn't want people over appraising things.
But like we need to use this guy or whatever. And I don't know. And you're not allowed, like for the audience, you're not allowed to steer like the appraisal. Like you're not, I don't know. You're not allowed to like, talk to him directly or some shit, but you are allowed to like provide comps and like show like, this is how I arrived to my listing price or whatever. And just kind of leave it at that.
Yeah. I'll always remember one of the refis that Dan and I did where I was kind of worried about it because it was like this duplex in an area where there aren't a ton of duplexes, but there are some. And it was really, really big compared to other properties in the area. And I was like, fuck, we needed to be apprised for a huge amount of money into this. And I showed up to walk the appraiser through. And the guy goes, oh, perfect. Because I own 2 duplexes down the street. I was like, fuck yeah.
You're like,
I know this is going to be an awesome one.
This is about the progress, bro.
And sure enough, the appraisal came back sky high because that dude's pumping up his numbers like everyone else. So. But I don't know. It's a racket. And so what's your, I guess like your action steps to help people get like the best appraisals when they're going through this process, Dylan? Well, I mean, I guess you wouldn't know because you're getting bossed, but Dan.
Yeah. Well, and then like, I kind of got lazy though. Like I just like, I mean, for a while, like how long, like 2020 through 2020 till now, how long did they come back low? Not often.
Sure.
Right. But I think the best way is obviously provide the comps that you use to list a place. I think that's going to be number one. And then number 2 is just literally list all the improvements that you put into your house.
Yeah.
Right. Like a rehab, an upgrade list is what I've been doing.
Yeah.
That's
And I don't know how you're doing it, Dylan, but like times in the past, like, so we work with pretty much the same bank here in town, and that's who I'll call back. Okay, so I totally get it. And I guess I'll step back. Here's the process. So the appraiser sends it to the bank, who then the bank has their own underwriting department that basically kind of fact checks the appraiser and the whole process. They underwrite it to make sure the loan's good. And then it goes to whoever. And in between it, sometimes if it's a smaller bank, they might have like a financing board to make sure that they're going to finance you. So you've got the asset and then you've got you as a person. And when I've done this, it's like, okay, so here's the comps that they used. These are the ones we would use. And then the underwriter will take it and then they may agree or disagree. And then they may say, yeah, you know what? We're good. They've got the appraiser that they need to document for their board, but then they'll throw in those comps and say, oh, okay, yeah, we will go with this higher one. If this is assuming it's a lender that it's your lender, right? Which when you're doing like a BRRRR, it is your lender.
Which the refi ones, I think typically come in like a little bit less than a contract price would.
I've always found that.
Well, you're trying to maximize it regardless, right? And so like you want it to be as far above as you can. And so you're trying to provide comps to justify it. On the sale, if you're working with a lender, which you can, right? Like, because if you are well networked or you refer a lender, then you can still have that conversation and make sure that you're in the best interest. But other than that, it's like, hopefully the buyer and the buyer's agent are willing to work with you and they want the house bad enough. And you say, hey, let's try to do this. Plan A is like, let's resubmit some comps and work with your appraiser and your bank to make sure that we're all on the same page. And then worst case scenario, split the difference or something like that.
Yeah. It's always easier to do this on the front end though, because if you get a low one and then you go back to the appraiser, be like, hey, I think you're wrong. Please look at this data. It could almost be like an ego thing. Like, no, I'm right.
And
like,
honestly, in your situation, Dylan, when you're selling your properties, do you show up there with the appraiser?
I used to. I haven't done it.
Yeah, that's what every agent, out there, that's their trick in their book. And it just depends on the appraiser you have. But for you, if you're selling your flip, oh, sure, when's the appraiser going to go out there? Cool. Awesome. Yeah, that works perfectly. And you just show up there and be like, hey, I'm the seller.
Yep. Yeah. And oftentimes they'll appreciate it, but it really depends on who you get, which for being a data driven business, that's like kind of like
It's problematic.
Yeah. And it's important to understand how appraisers think too, which a lot of them, will think off of square footage more so than anything else. That's what they look at is the total price per square footage. And they use that to calculate your own property. Because understanding how appraisers think, if you're going to close in anything, is going to determine what your actual ARV is. Doesn't matter what you think it is. An appraiser can come in and completely botch your flip or botch your cash out refi if they decide that it's worth less. And there's really not a lot you can do about it at that point.
Yeah.
So
the condo, we were going to make 20K and we made 8.
Nice. That's fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but what do I do? Take it off and try to relist it? And I had the same problem again and wait another 3 months.
Yeah. So, yeah, I know. So what I've heard about people doing back in the day, when the market was like pretty hot, is basically what they would do is, they would want to keep that higher purchase price. And so they would sell, the buyer would basically agree to come up the extra down payment needed for that appraisal gap. And then what they would do is they would carry a second position with that buyer for whatever amount that was. And it would have like favorable terms, but it would lead to net more money over a 12-month span. And it would usually be kind of like an aggressive pay down if they were able to pay it. But it's something that I've heard of people doing. I've never done it myself, but it can be a workaround if it's something reasonable. If you're off like $100,000, it's not reasonable. But if you're off like 12 or 15 or 20, could definitely be something you could buy.
Yeah,
totally.
And that might work more for income producing properties, maybe like a 2 to 4 unit versus over a single family. But
versus an FHA borrower who like you needed to pay off their $15 credit card in order to get them to close. Yeah, you should definitely not do that with one of those people.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
So, cool. Well, sorry, I didn't with that, Dylan, but that is what it is.
No, awesome. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I guess going forward, maybe we'll be a little bit more conservative on our ARVs, but that's, just, you got to take what the market gives you and just adapt to. Like, exactly. I don't want to sound like I'm bitching on here too, but at the same time, all I could very well justify the reasons that we're having those prices.
I guess I'll just add to close it out is like, that is also why working and talking to active operators is more important than some dude who he's like, man, I did 100 flips in 2015. Cool. Who cares? That's not what's working in the market right now. Like whatever that guy's saying, it doesn't matter. You're talking to people that are actually in the market buying and selling things every single day. They're the ones that are going to have the best advice for you.
Totally. Yeah. But I know we had another topic we're going to go into. I don't know if we have enough time for it, but like what you're going through on there, Dan, is interesting. I've actually been thinking about this a lot. I feel like we had this wave of people that were like successful 7-8 years ago that were really pushing education, whatever. I mean, obviously we have our own education, but we're also active operators. Are they like all gone now? I feel like that entire wave has like died out.
I think so.
Of the people that are like the 2015 to pre-COVID success stories. Like where did they go? I feel like I don't hear from any of those people anymore. If you look at kind of like a lot of like the Wholesaling Inc. people, or like a lot of the people that were like on Bigger Pockets back through then, they had like the kind of some of the recurring names that would come up. I can't even think of them right now.
Yeah, it's because real estate got hard, man, and they pivoted. I don't know what they did. I think some of them probably lost their ass. They
lost their ass. Some of them are probably full of shit the entire time.
There's that, right? And then talking about what they did.
There might be some who are like, I'm done. Like I made my, I don't know, $5 million.
Maybe like 3% of them. I think there's so many people. Like the one that gets me, actually, I don't even know his name because I don't really listen to the podcast, but the Airbnb guys, how like Bigger Pockets went through a bunch of Airbnb guys, like that was their thing. I can't imagine they have anything valuable to talk about right now. They're like, I own 12 Airbnbs and I gross $350,000 in rents.
My expenses are $400,000.
They're all talking about how they bought some, Motel 6 that's an hour outside of Palm Springs. They're turning it into a boutique hotel.
Yeah.
It's like just because you put like a nicer comforter in this shitty motel doesn't make it a
hookers are still going to want to rent it by the hour.
Right. Hey, it's boutique for somebody.
Yeah.
Needs the right audience. But I guess point I was going with that is, as you're looking at people, right, that are out there, whether it's in social media or in person, how do you actually tell if somebody's legit or not? What are like the red flags of like things that they say, how they present themselves? What are the things that like immediately make you go like, okay, that person like actually kind of knows what they're talking about. Do you have any stuff that were off the bat? So like, I guess for me, just as an example, the biggest red flags that I hear for, as soon as anybody brings up these things, I know that they're not worth my time. If they immediately start talking about their assets under management, their AUM, their door count, or their like cash flow, right? Because and especially if it's like a really round number, they're full of shit.
Yeah.
Because like those that's can be so fabricated so easily. Like you could easily have a $50,000 LP investment that you made, and like, yeah, I own 500 doors. Like, no, you don't. You own 2.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Like,
the big checks, I think, would be a big one for me.
The big
like
checks.
the picture in front of the like $100,000 check that's probably just a rehab draw.
Yeah. That is a huge one. I know. Like I actually have. I share this picture every so often is of me with a big check. It's like $108,000 or something. And what I like to do is share that and then follow up with the fact that I actually lost $25,000 on that house.
Totally.
Right. Because it's completely full of shit.
I think another thing that like they say, and this one's straight at pace, like, oh, I do thousands of deals a year. It's like I'm actually in a room with dudes that are legit this week, at a GoBundance event. I guarantee not a single one of them can say that they've done thousands of deals.
No.
Pace always talks about like his community, right? So if they're really big on, join my community, or we have this mastermind, that's usually a red flag too. With the caveat, there are some like, even you guys, there's actually a guy in Columbus here that runs one that's legit, but it's hard to really tell the difference unless they're posting like legit content. Like, like for example, the other guy posted the other day, he's like, hey, we were going to buy this house on 123 Main Street, but the reason why we didn't is because the house 2 doors down looks like trash. Right. And that's not something like other people would see, like, or even notice. Like your neighbor's house is going to affect the value of the subject property. Right. Like, as one-off example.
Sure. Yeah. It's important to have like some sort of context about what a successful business actually looks like, especially regarding basic KPIs like their cost per deal or what a reasonable number of deals per month is. Because Josh and Tiffany High, a lot of people are into their stuff, but they always say shit like, oh, we have 1 AM that does 27 deals a month. I'm like,
liar.
No, you fucking don't.
It's impossible. It's impossible.
Like, it's literally impossible. It doesn't make any sense. Right. Yeah. Or like they were talking about how like their cost per deal was down to like, or cost per contract down to like $1,100. And I'm like, nobody else is like that. Like there's you're not the fucking LeBron James of real estate. Like, what are you talking about?
No, they are liars.
You just reminded me of put him on blast. Steve Trino.
Yeah.
He like did like a coaching thing. I'm like, bro, I listened to you talk. There's no way you're good with selling.
No.
I love it.
Just from like your pitches on Instagram.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Yeah. If it seems like it's amazing, like something out of this world, it's a lie. It's a lie. Because think about it. Like if these people are really doing that much work, they would love to show you the actual shit they're doing. They would love to do it. But instead they're going to talk about how much they've done. They would show it to you, right? Because every influencer is thirsty for Instagram content.
Yeah.
That and some of it's ego thing, but you guys can even speak to this. Education, I would assume, is a better business model than wholesaling.
It is if you're a liar. Honestly, like we have our scale group. I put a lot of time into trying to create content and stuff that is actually actionable. I have these cringy fucking Instagram reels. We do this podcast, all these different things. It is fascinating to me how many people will like hit me up, be like, hey, I love this video about you hiring VAs. Tell me about that. Tell me how you did this sub to. Tell me all those things. Give them all that. And then like 3 weeks later, they're like, hey, I signed up for Josh and Tiffany's course. I'm not really getting what I need from them. So can you tell me what your direct mail looks like? I'm like, no, fuck off.
Eat a dick.
Like, that I had my thing. You chose to go to theirs because they swindled you with their like better ads and more aggressive sales team.
Their lies.
Yeah.
I would say education can be, to your point too, Dylan, it can be. But for Mike and I, like we're much better operators than we are, I guess, liars. I don't know. Like we just want to do the right thing.
I just know from like if you look at a business, like fundamentally, you have recurring revenue as long as your members stay.
Yeah.
Whereas you don't have those up and downs as you do with wholesaling, maybe. So just from a projection.
Well, and once you get to like scale, to like a certain membership level, if you can continue to provide like absolute value to those folks, that is a great. Yeah, it's like you're right. The membership revenue can kind of stay flat and not that you don't have the up and downs, but.
And your input, you might have to put as much input, but if your membership grows exponentially, it's an outsized return.
It is,
right, from
sure.
that money that's getting in.
It is, and the if you go down to like traditional business, the Alex Ramosi, you can actually calculate your customer acquisition costs, and you can actually influence your LTV, your lifetime value, by doing various things, right? And so that makes it easier to scale because also to your lifetime value can recur for many, many years. It's like, honestly, if you are building a community and you bring in someone that has an annual recurring membership, it's not that different from having a rental property, right? Because every single year you get that check that comes in again. And, if you don't nurture it, it can obviously go away. But if you do and provide value, there's a lot of upside. But I mean, like, depending on how you look at it, like it can definitely be a better business model. But I would also say that it has the potential to explode a lot more than like an established wholesaling business.
For sure.
And it can go away a lot faster.
Yeah, and that's why then you see all these.
Yeah, your brand gets tarnished or ruined. Like, no one's going to help like come to your thing.
And if you're not providing value, right? Like a lot of these guys aren't providing true value, so they can't get off the hamster wheel, right? And then all of a sudden they're like just trying to grow their audience, so they start talking about like religion and like laying in bed with their wife
or
and
politics,
talk about, or politics,
like
or whatever. They're just trying to get views because in their mind that's how they'll convert more people, and it's just a hamster wheel.
Yeah, that's the other good red flag, Dan. Talking about Chris Crone there with the cringy videos of him in bed with his wife. She's like eating spaghetti or some shit. Like, it's fucking wild.
So weird.
But like when people start posting like super outlandish statements about things, or they start going like, or
that's the spiral right there.
That is the spiral. As soon as you have a real estate person, influencer, coach, guru, whatever, that starts talking about politics or religion or like family values or getting like just completely off the plot of why they started, that is a signal that person is at the end of their
What about if they start dyeing their hair certain colors?
I mean, like, people can do that, like, if you still bring real estate value, but like, thing is, he did that first. Brian Pineda, that was his first grasp. And now he's just saying things like, I don't know, whatever political thing he can do to cause outrage, he just jumps on that right away. I'm like, oh my God.
Clickbait, baby.
Yeah. Or post with this Rivian or whatever car he's buying.
That's another one. So I don't know. It is interesting. I mean, I like, fundamentally, if you are going to follow people, like obviously if you guys listen to this show, you follow us, verify that they are actual operators.
Totally.
Listen to like the business stuff they talk about, is it actually like make sense, not only logically, but kind of like in your gut. And if you have like a red flag, it's probably because they're full of shit, like honestly. And see if there's like people that can actually vouch for what this person's doing in the real estate space. Because here's the other thing too, is if they were successful years ago, absolutely they could still have some good fundamental knowledge for you around real estate. Like you listen to stuff that Brandon Turner talks about from when he built his residential portfolio years ago. He keeps it so basic that like, sure, there's like a lot, like newbies can learn a lot from him. But the thing is, the people that are trying to be like operator coaches are trying to help you build like a business that haven't done it for 6 years. Honestly, they're completely out of touch with what it takes to be successful now.
What's like the Dunning-Kruger effect where like someone's done like 3 deals and they're like, I know everything. I'm going to be a coach now. I'm going to teach everybody. Then as you go along with time, you realize there's a lot of stuff I don't know. And then you go on the other side of that bell curve. Right. But it's just, it works for everything.
I know. Yeah. Just like, So I mean, like every space, not just real estate.
I would like to see, and I know we're going off like these tangents. I would like customer acquisition costs, like we talked about, can be like a measurable thing. Very hard to do in wholesaling because your lifetime customer is like one person.
Yeah.
Well, you usually have a big LTV. We've had a couple repeats, haven't we? Or maybe referrals.
We've had referrals, but the LTVs are low, but the customer acquisition cost would be like a cost per deal, and that's always Dan and I's litmus test when we've had guests on the show is, we always trying to push on people and like ask them what their marketing system looks like, what their cost per deal is. And the thing that's so fascinating, and we've harped on this every time it happens on the show, is all like the verified operators that we know are good, we all have the same numbers, right? Yeah. Like the cost per deal is typically like between $3,500 to $4,500. The number of leads that it takes to get a deal are typically about the same. The profit of those deals will vary depending on market, but will always be kind of in like the same ballpark. And anyone that's like way off of that, I mean, obviously if they're really high compared to that, good for them for being honest while coming on the show.
Right.
If they're way below that, then it's an immediate red flag that I'm like, okay, I don't know if I believe
with the cap, because we had some scale members that said their cost per deal is around like 1,500.
Yeah.
But they're very like, okay, I shouldn't say they're small, but like they do 1 to 2, maybe 3
When you're
deals
just
a month
starting
right
out
now.
too,
Like,
yeah. Like
they're also
so it
new.
makes sense.
You're hustling hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, they're putting in so much time. Like mine's around like 3,500 right now,
Well, as you
but I don't have
as you
overhead
scale
as you
up
guys.
too, like the more marketing you do, like you have to do more to do more deals, right? But there's inefficiencies that come with scale. So naturally your cost per deal is going to go up. But when you're hustling and you're sending out small batches of direct mail and you're like nurturing every single lead that comes in, and then you get like a referral from a dude at a meetup, like it all averages out to get to that like 2,000. Or you're in like a really low cost market and you're not to scale yet. Like scale will always add those inefficiencies in it, and you will kind of average to that 35 to 4,500.
Yeah, totally. I just want to put that nuance behind it.
Sure.
But for people who are listening, would you rather have a cost per deal that's 1,500, but you made 20,000 this month, or a cost per deal that's 5,000, but you made 100 grand?
Exactly. Yeah. It's just the return on ad spend is ultimately what matters. But cool. All right, guys. Well, appreciate the candor on that. It was something I thought about that, I've been, I would say, pondering just as I've connected with more and more people. I'm just like, I don't know. I get worn down by the
you should
BS.
do your DMs per sign up ratio
right,
to see what that comes out
for
like the scale community or whatever, like whoever swipes up on your reels or stories or whatever it may be.
It's tough. I mean, like that is a legitimate KPI I probably should track, because I would say like when people inquire with me about scale, like seriously, most of the time they sign up because I've engaged with them for a while and I have brought value. The thing that always gets me is when there's like the one-off conversations and I feel like I provide value, and then they go and sign up with somebody else because I'm like, I guess I didn't bring them enough value. But like Dan and I talked about this a lot. Like if you really wanted to make scale or like this, like a huge thing, the path is very direct. It's just like, how ethically do you want to be when you do it, and how much truth do you want to be to people? I mean, you even talk to marketing companies. They're like, yeah, but like, you need to like talk more about like your wins. You need to like make it sound like simpler for people. I'm like, I don't want to do that because I don't think it's realistic.
Exactly.
And I'm not willing to give up my integrity. Like I will die on that hill rather than make a shit ton of money for why.
Totally. And like once you get to a certain member count, and no one knows what that is, but it's like the law of diminishing returns. Like it eventually goes down.
Yes.
At a certain, and who knows what that number is? Like every community is going to be different, but it just happens.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of the game. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
Anyways, all right. Dylan, what's your new Instagram handle?
I just changed it. So right now it's Dylan_does_deals.
There you go.
Dylan
Much
with a
better.
Y.
Dylan with a Y. Little alliteration there. So go shoot Dylan a follow if you like his candor on the show. He's going to be diving into some more content stuff as well. I'm so excited if you start doing TikTok dances on there.
Let's go.
That's how we're
I don't
going to
even
know.
have TikTok.
Get it?
Me neither. Me neither. But follow me at Mike_invest and follow Dan at InvestorManDan. All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
See ya.